And welcome to another edition of the Pick and Downs podcast. I'm your host, per usual, here with P. Bush and Zoo's on vacation. So, P. Bush, how you doing?
Doing well, man. Jealous that I think we both are. The Zoo's down in the Bahamas this week. Man, can't even place any bets on the conference finals first couple games, man. I'm sure he's sweating a little bit, but man, he's on a beach, probably having his one mojito and just having a grand old time. But you know how it is. But yeah, man, we got good, really interesting. I love the title you put here. You know, the conference finals we all kind of predicted, right? You know, not really.
Yeah.
You know, kind of all saw the Thunder coming. I do think some people thought the Knicks might have a chance just because of their path. And then, you know, I'm not saying that I loved them over the Celtics going into the playoffs, you know, with that, knowing that was going to be the potential matchup. But once they started playing against them, man, we talked about it. The Celtics, you know, they kind of live and die by the three, and for years they have lived very well off of it. And it just finally caught up with them a little bit. And then obviously we touched on the Tatum injury last week, but the Knicks are looking good, man. And I love this matchup with the Pacers. You know, we got a rematch, right, from last year. Brunson versus Halliburton. We got a couple new faces. You know, they got rid of playoff Randall, and now he's actually doing playoff things out in Minnesota. And they brought in Cat, and he's been absolutely huge. So, you know, starting tonight, I mean, we got the Timberwolves and Thunder. I think this is a fantastic matchup too, though. You know, I just think it's going to come down to the bigs, right? And this is what we talked about with the Nuggets as well. That was something I've said. I was like, if I'm the Thunder, I'm not that concerned with the Nuggets. Now it went 7, and you know the Thunder had some bad games. Jalen Williams, sorry, that was pretty much all on you. But the one thing that was pretty consistent is that outside of that first game when Jokic went absolutely berserk, Hartenstein did a pretty damn good job on him. I mean, he obviously still got to the foul line. He's always going to do that. But I was very impressed with how Hartenstein played, and I'm now curious to see how the Thunder will match up with the bigs in Minnesota. You know, you got Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert. Not that Julius is a monster rebounder, but we know his physicality, and he can be not only a rebounder and scorer, but now he's becoming a playmaker for this team. So how do you match up Chet and Hartenstein against these two, right? I think you have to put Hartenstein on Gobert, right? Because for rebounding purposes, Chet's a good rebounder, but he's probably would get bodied by Gobert down low. For sure. But then that means that you got to put Chet up against Julius Randle, and that is going to be driving to the left every single time, finishing strong at the rim. And, you know, Chet's a great shot blocker, but he's kind of a good shot blocker going straight up, not when someone's coming downhill right at him. Because if you can get a little bit of a body into him and create some separation, which we've seen Julius doing extremely well the first 2 rounds of the playoffs against bigger dudes too. Yeah. That's where I think the key is. And, you know, we know what SGA and Ant are going to do, right? They're going to get their shots. SGA in the mid-range and driving ability. He's going to get to the free throw line. As long as Ant can understand when he's off from 3-point line and realize that he needs to take the ball to the hole, which he usually ends up doing in the second half if he's having a slower first half. I think they'll be fine. So really this series comes down to not only the big men. I'm curious to see what the Thunder do for that defensive matchup. But the keys for both of these teams is, once again, Jalen Williams. You got to know your game going into each of these, man. Like if you're off, you have plenty of other players. This is one of the deepest teams, if not the deepest team in the league. Share the load, man. Like pause, but you know, share it. Share the absolute ball, man. Like if you're shooting 5 for, you know, even if you're shooting 2 for 7 to start the game, most of the games that he started that way have maintained that same level of play the rest of the way. So, you know, I think as long as they kind of know their roles, and he is able to be efficient, I think they'll be in the series. And then on the Timberwolves, Jaden McDaniels has to have an absolute series. I think he's been a huge X factor. Him and Naz Reid, we talk about all the time. You know, I'm very curious to see how both of those guys come out and play. And they got to stay out of foul trouble. Because that's going to be the wings on the Timberwolves, who are going to have to be collapsing on SGA when he tries to get into the paint. You got to be defensive, but you can't be just putting your hands any which way, because he will get calls. He is that level of player. He's been averaging 30 plus for years, a couple years now. He's going to get to the line. And as long as, because we saw this, Sean, Naz Reid against the Warriors had some horrible foul trouble issues. Honestly, in both.
Yeah, he did.
and they need him when he's hitting threes in the corner. He's getting offensive rebounds. He's crashing. That team is really difficult to beat, and I do think that the T-Wolves match up well with them. One of the only teams that does. So, I know I kind of ran through everything there. We can break it down, but I'm taking the Timberwolves in 7. I think this is going to be a great series, bit more competitive maybe than the other one. But the T-Wolves are not a 6 seed. Let's just be honest. The West was just that stacked this year. They could have easily been in the boat of the Lakers, right, who they beat in the first round. As the 3 seed, we know how compact that kind of 3 through 7 was, or even 3 through 8. So this is not like a huge disparity. You see that 1 versus 6, and you're like, oh, Thunder are the way better team. Yeah, they were one of, if not the best team in the league this year, but the Timberwolves are not that far behind.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think before the pod, I was kind of talking about OKC's depth, but I'm with you. I kind of feel like with Minnesota, the X factor is going to be Naz Reid and Jalen McDaniels. Like, I guess it's been throughout the entire playoffs. Because I'm kind of confident right now. I kind of feel like, and I may jinx him, but I kind of feel like Julius Randle is going to show up and be the guy he's been all playoffs. So I'm kind of betting on him to have a really good series. And we know what Ant-Man's going to do. If they are going to win this series, and I think the Timberwolves can win it in 6 or 7, you can't have Ant-Man doing what he did in that game 1 against Golden State and just kind of going through the motions and missing all the shots. Because if you get down against OKC, they have the ability to kind of step on your throat. And I know people are saying, well, they didn't step on the throats of the Denver Nuggets, but I mean, they were going against Nikola Jokic, so it's a little different.
True.
Him being in his prime right now is kind of, it's tough to just think you can just, play how you want to play and do whatever. And do whatever you want to do and all that type of stuff. So I do think with obviously SGA and Ant-Man doing what they do, I think the biggest X factor is definitely going to be Rudy Gobert. And not so much because of obviously he's not an offensive player. I do think that his ability to bother Hartenstein and Chet, who, if we're being honest, Chet, I know he had the injury. I don't know if it was this year or last year, whenever he had it, but I feel like he's lingered a little bit because he's been up and down the playoffs. He hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been like what you would think of as a third option that's just getting off to where he's like, oh, he just had a 25-point game, or oh, he just had a 30-point game out of nowhere. I think he's still kind of trying to learn how to fit in that role because obviously the pecking order is Shea, Jalen, and then him. I think what part of Minnesota's game plan, what they need to do is have Rudy bother Hartenstein because, like you said, I think he's a versatile piece. And also him bother Chet, not out on the perimeter because Chet can shoot the 3, but anytime Chet thinks about pump faking and come up to the middle, Rudy Gobert needs to be there to affect shots and things of that nature. I'm also looking at one thing if I'm a Thunder fan, and this is just because when I watched Game 7 with OKC playing Denver, Alex Caruso being the ultimate chess piece, I'm really going to I really want to see how they use him against Anthony Edwards, because if he can just maybe hold Ant to, Ant's going to get his points, but he's not efficient doing it and he's taking a lot of different shots. That might be something that really affects this series and gets this series maybe on the side of OKC winning it, because Caruso is a guy who is going to come in, bring his lunch pail. He's going to play elite defense on whoever he's playing up on the perimeter. And I wouldn't be shocked if they maybe had reps with him playing against Julius Randle, because after him guarding Jokic in Game 7, even though a lot of it he was hacking, like if you can tell me that he can bother Jokic, then yeah, I'm going to put him on Julius Randle or Ant-Man. And that might shift the series because
that frees up kind of a lot.
Yeah. And if he's effective, not saying he will be, but if he is somewhat effective, I don't know. Like that could make it a quick series for OKC, because when it comes to the depth, I mean, I'm talking about Naz Reid and Jalen McDaniels. They need to have massive series, but OKC, Case and Wallace. We were just talking about, I think,
Aaron Wiggins.
Aaron Wiggins. Different guys. Lou Dort could come in and hit, I think in Game 6, I don't know if it's a game they lost or Game 5, like Lou Dort, I think it was Game 5 where he hit those couple of threes where it's like, well, I mean, if you got one of the best defensive stoppers, now even think about him as another defensive stopper, with Ant-Man and Julius Randle.
Probably McDaniels too.
Yeah, it's like the depth and what they do with OKC is very overwhelming. I just kind of generally think that Minnesota has kind of just surprised this entire playoffs, and it started with the Lakers series. And I kind of feel like the only way they can get to winning in game 6 or game 7, and just if they get this game 1. And I know we're talking live, but you kind of need, I don't want to say it's a must win because you're on the road and you got to split one, but this feels like a must win because they're coming off of game 7. You've been home for a couple of days. You need to kind of get this one. You should have more energy. You need to make a statement. And like I said, after that, it's house money. Like lose game 2, whatever, and then you can go back home feeling good. But they really need to get this game 1 because of all the circumstances surrounding it. So I'm interested. Like I said, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what do you think about I just thought about this because we haven't talked about like one dude in the starting lineup for either side. And that's Mike Conley. And I know it's not a stud. It's not what he used to be in Memphis. But they're going to have to hide Shea defensively, right? Shea's a decent defender, but he is probably Jalen Williams is all right. He's probably one of the worst defenders on the team. Yeah. And that's not saying he's horrible. Like that's just showing how good of a defensive team OKC is. But if Mike Conley can just make the Thunder respect the 3, and maybe he takes 4 shots from 3 a game and he hits 2 of them. Because let's be honest, he has not had to do much with Ant and especially with Julius Randle carrying both of these past 2 series. I just think that as long as he can be somewhat effective in the shots that he takes, then they can't fully just, say, all right, Shea,
sell out,
fully rest on the defensive end. We'll help you out with Mike Conley. If you have to actually respect it, I think that is a piece that I know Finch is telling his team, hey, Mike, if you have a wide open shot, you have to take it because we need them to respect every single person, as well as obviously knowing that Rudy Gobert can be a beast. We've seen him be a beast offensively in a handful of games in these playoffs. And it's because they just started doing lob threats to him, and he obviously dominates the O boards. But I do think Mike Conley, whether that be in a pick and roll situation or, just kind of in an off ball role, as we know, Ant has become a great playmaker as well. He just has to be respectable. And they haven't really had to ask him to do that yet. So this is a series where he's going to need to. They're going to need to be firing on all cylinders.
DiVincenzo as well. The guys that are their bench guys, they need to make shots.
Alexander
Walker.
It's
not so much. Yeah, those guys that I was talking about with OKC who they could just make 2 or 3 threes in a row. I just think with OKC, I've seen it more, and maybe because I was kind of paying attention more to that series because it was more interesting. But DiVincenzo and Alexander Walker has to be factors on the perimeter. And even with Alexander Walker, if he can just kind of, whenever he's coming in, he can spell McDaniels or Anthony Edwards in terms of just being a defensive presence. They're going to need them to step up. I just have a little bit more faith that Wallace and the other bench guys I think they're going to be able to show up, and that's going to be the difference. But this is, I think, a very evenly matched Western Final. Like, if you just look at the makeups of both of the teams, and it's kind of sending a signal, like, the 3 ball is still here, but, like, you're winning with, and we know this, but, like, big guys and wings, like, bigger players, like, that is what's going for the league. And, like I said, we're about to go into the Knicks and Pacers, but, this is kind of the blueprint. So, all the other Western Conference teams, like, if you're trying to get your hands on Giannis, it may take a lot to, get that guy over there on the Western Conference, but it might be worth it because those type of guys win in this league. So,
all right, Sean, let me pull up the series odds real quick for everyone to know here, on the Timberwolves, because I am curious at how. I mean, they're obviously not favored, right, in tonight's game, but in the series in general, I'd be curious to know how much of a disparity they really have because, for me, I just don't think. And I said this earlier. Yeah, like tonight, they're plus 230 for game 1. Now, they are on the road, obviously. But at the same time, it's like this team is right there. And I mentioned this very briefly. They are one of the only teams that actually played the Thunder well all season.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, so right here, they're plus 295 for the series. The Thunder are minus 370. I mean, we're calling it a pick'em because I think the thing that we're taking into account is the level at which Julius Randle is playing is way above even in the regular season, right? And to be honest, I'd also echo the same sentiment about Rudy Gobert. But I don't think Vegas trusts them to do it 3 times. We always talk about in any sport doing something 3 times. We talk about it in championship aspects, but it's also really hard to play that perfectly 3 series in a row as you are getting more tired as you go on. So maybe that's why they're priced that way, but I might have to take advantage.
I kind of like it because Minnesota, unless Julius falls off a cliff, and if that happens, then all bets are off. But if
Yeah.
I'm confident, I've just seen a lot, and I know it's Golden State and the Lakers, whatever. But he just looks comfortable. And I think what sold me was when he was going at Draymond, who's apparently supposed to be the Defensive Player of the Year. Like, he was not fearful going. I know he's left-handed, but on his left hand, just bullying him in the paint. I was like, okay, this dude's kind of he's showing up. So I think that's what's kind of guiding me. But I don't know. I mean, maybe too, you can factor in OKC is really, really hard to play at. I mean, it's not like you're playing.
Yeah.
So it's
they look like
just
a
factoring
soccer
in.
stadium, like the level of fandom, right?
So,
It's difficult.
it might just be if it goes 7 and you got to go on the road and play OKC in a game 7, then it's going to be OKC that wins that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. But like I said, that series I feel is starting tonight and it's going to be super exciting. Shifting over to the Knicks and Pacers. What is your thoughts on that one?
This one I argue is a true pick 'em, but at the same time, I think choosing is very, very easy, and I'll break it down a little bit. I'll just start with I'm gonna take the Pacers. I'm gonna take them in probably 6 games.
Me too.
But here's the thing, right? Because once again, we talk about this all the time. Thibodeau is starting five, little McBride, right? And then maybe toss in another like Precious Chua or whatever.
Mitchell Robinson, whoever.
Mitchell Robinson, yeah, exactly. But it's really just the starting 5. And I'm not worried about Brunson. We know what he does. I'm not too worried about Cat. I know he's had some inconsistent play in the playoffs, including last year a bit, but I do think the 2-man game. Oh, there he is.
Is that
Zoo watching live, man. But here's the thing, John. The pick and roll with Brunson and Cat can be deadly, right? Because you're asking a 7-footer who's guarding Cat to play on the perimeter, and you have to respect his 3-point game because we've said this for years. If he hits his first couple, he's going to be hot that entire game. And the funny thing is, that's kind of how Julius Randle's been playing in Minnesota, and they went flip-flopped each team and flip-flopped conferences this past season. But what I think, and the reason I'm kind of siding with the Pacers, is Rick Carlisle has been an unbelievable coach at this point, and he's going to have a defensive scheme where he probably because if you watch the Celtics series, Horford got destroyed, right, trying to guard Cat. He's just too slow.
Time to pack it up.
He's old, right? And you could argue that okay, maybe Miles Turner could do better, but Miles Turner is not nearly as nimble, even though he is a nimble player. He is not as nimble as Cat, and he can't shoot as consistently, even though Miles Turner is a good shooter at times.
Yeah.
He's a better paint defender, and he's leading the playoffs in blocks, right? Well, you got 2 damn good perimeter defenders in Nembhard and Nesmith, especially Nesmith.
Dogs.
6'6" with a 6'10" wingspan. I mean, that's just unbelievable. I would not be surprised. They could put Nesmith on Brunson, and they might even hide Halliburton on Hart because he, like I said with SGA, you're going to have to hide Halliburton. I think that's the other issue. If you can hide him on Josh Hart, it is a risk because we know Hart can attack and he could get Halliburton in foul trouble, but you can kind of play off of him, right? He can shoot threes, but I'm fine with him. He's like a worse version of Aaron Gordon, right? Like Aaron Gordon kind of took that step with the 3-point line. I'm still not 100% there with Josh Hart. He might give you 1 a game, but I'm fine if I'm Rick Carlisle letting Halliburton come off a little bit. To free up a better defender at the perimeter, because we just talked about Caruso giving Jokic a decent time. Maybe Nesmith could do that to Cat, right? And if you get in Cat's head, he gets flustered. We know his antics that he can have on the court.
Foul trouble.
If you can get in his head a little bit and just force his life to be a lot harder on the floor, I think the Pacers are in a very good situation. And then on the offensive side, look, man, they had 6 players, the starting 5 plus Mathurin, averaged 10-plus points per game on 50% shooting against the Celtics, who are not a scrub defensive team. And I just think what it comes down to for me, like I said, we know Brunson's going to get his. We know Cat, depending on the defensive scheme, is going to probably get his. OG Anunoby has been feast or famine. Let's be completely honest. He's had a bunch of 20-plus point games and a handful of games that are under 10 points. This game is really going to come down to Bridges and his offensive play for the Knicks. And on the Pacers side, I think it's going to come down to Siakam and how well Miles Turner plays and how they match up Miles Turner on the defensive side. But I just think the pressure that the Pacers are going to put on Brunson is ridiculous. They're such a deep team. I mean, like they have 11 dudes that play 9+ minutes. We talked about this with the Thunder, same way. They can full court press Brunson the whole time. And we saw the Pistons do that in the first round.
Yeah, Ausar Thompson was doing that.
Yeah, Ausar Thompson, but not nearly. They can't do that as much because it was really only Ausar Thompson, right, that was able to do that. Yeah. Well, they can bring in, McConnell. They could switch Nembhard on him. They could put Nesmith. They could make Halliburton guard him for a couple plays too, and just press him and make his life a living hell. And at the end of the day, I trust the Pacers' floor more than the Knicks. And the Knicks' floor comes into play a lot more than the Pacers does. They're just a more consistent ball club. They won 73% of their games in 2025. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm with you. Like, see, the thing with the Pacers that I think is also playing into their favor, and I think this has kind of been like their thing for them the entire playoffs, is I'm a little nervous that the Knicks are going to come into this series thinking we're on our pathway to the NBA Finals, and it's just this little bit Indiana team that's in the way. And I think this happens not just with the Knicks, but with a lot of teams that not like you could make this comparison to the Timberwolves, but the Timberwolves made the conference finals last year. So like, sure. I know they beat the Lakers, but it's like they did that, but they kind of was, in the mode of like, we're just trying to get back to where we were last year. The Knicks haven't been to the conference finals in what was it, 25 plus years or whatever.
Something like I think
beating the defending champs, you kind of being like, oh, like I can breathe a sigh of relief. Like we're here. I guarantee you, probably the most diehard Knicks fans are probably already making reservations and moving stuff around to think, hey, if we can get this deal right now, we can get it here because the finals are going to be in New York. And I think with Indiana, Cleveland kind of thought the same thing coming into that series, the semis, where they were like, Indiana, like, man, we were scared that Giannis may get to the next round. Like, nah, it's Indiana. And then Indiana came out, stole game one. So then Cleveland was kind of, a little shocked, like what just happened. And then game two happens, thinking, okay, we're going to even it up 1-1 and go to Indiana. It's like, no, Halliburton is going to end it 2-0. And that was basically the death knell of the series.
Yeah.
And like you said, all the things you talked about with the players, like the thing that's so impressive about Indiana is there is no liability on the floor in terms of scoring. Maybe Obi Toppin, but he's like McConnell, a guy that can move around a little bit. But McConnell, when he gets to hunting his shot, he can at least draw a foul. But like when Indiana has a bunch of guys on the floor, it feels like anybody can just go get a quick 8 or 10. So that makes them versatile. Yep. You already explained, like Nesmith, Nembhard, like they're going to lock down a perimeter. They're going to make it tough for Jalen Brunson. Not to say Jalen Brunson's not going to get his points, but I think Jalen Brunson's going to have to pull out that foul baiting bag that he likes to use and try to get some calls because
he's going to be around 40%.
It might be
shooting.
Tough.
He might be around 40%. It's going to be tough.
Yeah. So you factor that in. I mean, the best player in the series is Jalen Brunson, but man, Halliburton, in terms of how he can make clutch shots, he can get into the lane with that herky-jerky stop or start-stop. He can shoot the three. He could maybe make a case of like, yeah, I know you guys like Jalen Brunson, but he could maybe have an argument like, hey, I'm the best guard in this series. So you factor all those different things in. Miles Turner is a little streaky as a shooter. I mean, he was going crazy in that game 5, I think, or 4. I think it was 4.
Was it 4?
When they were I think it was 4, but they blew him out like crazy.
Yeah. He dropped one real quick.
Yeah. It's like, man, I look at that and I'm like, they just have guys that can make baskets at any part of the floor. Yeah. And for the Knicks, it's like, OG is a big factor because he has been inconsistent and he's got to be on point the entire series because if Brunson's going to have more of a, he's going to get his points but be not as effective. We need OG to step up. We're going to need Josh Hart to make some corner threes and be a pest on defense. Definitely going to need Miles McBride to come off and give us 10, 12 off the bench. And, I'm not saying that's not doable, but it just feels like with the Pacers, they have more guys that you could lean on and get you clutch buckets. Like I didn't even talk about Pascal Siakam, who's a champion and who's not scared of the moment either. So let's just say Halliburton doesn't have it in game 1, or name the other player who doesn't have it in game 1. Siakam can give you 20. So it just feels like they're like OKC, but like less talented. Like they're really deep, but they don't have the names where it's like, oh, that guy was a whatever first round draft pick, or that guy was a first round draft pick, or that guy had the reputation. They have a lot of lunch pail guys who are talented scorers. Yeah. So I just feel like my heart is rooting for the Knicks, but like if I placed like I don't know, placed a decent amount of money on it, I probably would place it on the Pacers because
Pacers are not favored. Plus 122. Yeah.
I think that's just I just think that's the coming off the beating the Celtics. I know Tatum was hurt, but like they beat the Celtics, home court, Garden, but it just game one again. It's the same thing with Minnesota. Like I think Knicks need to go 2-0. There needs to be no splits because as much as I talked about OKC and their fan base, like Indiana's home court is insane too. So if they get a split going to Indiana, I don't know. It's hard to like. I know a lot of people were kind of trying to say like the Cavs were hurt, and they were. But man, Indiana just even when the Cavs were like coming back in those games, Indiana just did not allow them. They just even like in that game 5 when they had that huge flurry and Donovan Mitchell made those 3. Like they just no.
But it's also I don't like that argument too because it's not like this was in game 7, right? That they pulled it out like like Darius Garland and Mobley came back and, they forced 7 or something. And really, no, this was done in 5 games. And the last 2 games, I know Garland wasn't 100% healthy, but they had pretty much everybody on their team playing, right? Yep. And it's, they were down 2-1 at the time. So it's like, all right, like they did have a decent chance. And then obviously everyone quoted the good old Max Strus down 3-1. Don't come into work if you don't believe. And then each man shoots 0 for 9. Well, that might be why you lose the series when some of your true 3-point shooters that you need to hit shots outside of your star players, like for the Pacers, they need Nesmith and Nembhard to be good scorers in this series because, the Knicks can get points a lot of different ways as well. I mean, we didn't. I know I mentioned Bridges, but he can give you an easy 20. And be a great perimeter defender. We saw him make huge plays in the Celtics series. And obviously we know Brunson. I think it's the X factor is OG Anunoby for the Knicks. Like they need him to be more consistent and they need him to be a reliable 3-point shooter and just not be in his own head. And I know he wasn't playing, but he is also a champion technically, right? Like with Siakam. Yeah. So, he's been to the finals. He knows what it feels like. He didn't play, but he was part of a team that was going through it. And I think that is crucial. It's just, I'm just excited because we're going to have a new champion, right? We're going to have.
I love that.
And if you look at each one of the teams, I know Ant isn't a point guard technically, but he does act like one a lot. And I know we talked about the big men and the wings being crucial. And I think they're the X factors in each of these series respectively. But the best player on each team is a guard. And all of these guys are going to have one of their first. Each of them are going to have their first chance at it, right? Because none of these teams made the finals last year, and I think it's going to be super exciting. I'm just happy that we're actually getting as much as I loved watching the Warriors over the years, or the Heat, or the Kobe Lakers, whatever you want to talk about. It's always good to kind of see. New faces that are representing in the finals, and 3 out of the 4 are smaller markets, quote unquote, right? So that's another.
I was just about to mention the smaller markets aspect. Like, I think if the NBA had their choice, they would want Minnesota and New York, just because of Ant Edwards, who they're desperately trying to make the face of the league. Yeah. And you just have the New York market. Like that's going to be. I think if we get that finals, I think the ratings are going to be really good. I can't say it would be great if it's the Pacers and OKC. Because if you're a diehard NBA fan, I would like it just because it would be a great series to watch. And I have grown to like Halliburton more. I know he's very polarizing, but I've grown to like him more. And you just have the fact of like OKC and their dynasty with all the guys that they have playing and on the bench. You like just looking at like, if they win, they could be this could be the start of something special. But it's just really cool. I do like the fact that it is going to be different winners this year. And I think this is not just a trend. This is just going to be the norm now. I think with LeBron and Steph and all those guys kind of getting to the space where they're getting out of the league, a lot of the talent based on the salary cap and all that type of stuff. And I don't have the brain power or the knowledge to know how all that works, but I do know that really what's what happens to be the formula is having, 2 stars, maybe one, or like with Indiana. I mean, I don't know if you even say they have 2 stars. They just have really one major star and a bunch of depth pieces. And kind of with New York, it's like Cat in name is a star, but it's like it's really Jalen Brunson and a bunch of dudes. So a lot of these guys, it just feels, or a lot of these teams are kind of in that framework, and it's interesting because, like I said, it makes it, it keeps everybody engaged, which is nice to see. It just doesn't make you feel like, okay, Lakers, Warriors, Heat, and whoever's the big market. Like, I know big markets are what everybody pushes, but I don't know. Like I said, as a fan, as a person who likes the NBA, like, and I have guys that I like that are stars, but it's like, if I like the NBA, I want to see and just watch basketball. Like, everything doesn't have to be, what do you call it? Like, just I know it's the entertainment business. I get that, but it's cool.
Good basketball is good basketball. If Neesmith is absolutely locking up Jalen Brunson, that's great basketball. It's the half of the game is playing defense and actually trying. It's what makes the game beautiful, man. It's a beautiful game to watch when it's played well. And at this level, when these guys are carrying this much, it's a completely different game than the regular season. And you could argue even in like the first round, right? They're smelling the championship. The conference finals is when it gets very interesting to watch the NBA. And honestly, I don't think there have been that many years where the conference finals was bad. I'm not trying to say that. But we also had an idea, okay, we know it's going to be Warriors Cavs, right, in the finals, outside of the, the Kawhi years, right? But, it's fun to just kind of not 100% know who's going to be in the finals this year, even though OKC is the best team in the league. They are – I know Zoo said it's OKC's championship to lose, but – they got a really tough opponent, man. So it's not a given.
They do.
That's all we can ask for.
Yeah. So, just looking at the score right now, Gobert just had an and one, and Minnesota's up 10-1. So I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, like I said, they get this game won, and we're going to continue to watch each of these playoff games on this podcast. We're going to be giving up to date, I guess, analysis on the podcast page, and you guys can follow us at Tyson Talks _ on Instagram, YouTube, Quantro Knows. 5-star reviews on Spotify, Apple. Please do that for us so we can be in the algorithms. And for me, P. Bush, and Zoo on vacation, we are out.